She was nothing, a broken wolf with a dying bond, cast aside by the man who swore to love her. They said she'd be dead by morning. But when a stranger with green eyes marked her in the moonlight, everything changed. Because that stranger wasn't just anyone. He was the Alpha King. And now the entire kingdom wants her gone. Stay until the end to see how a rejected wolf becomes the most powerful queen in the realm. Hit that like button and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Let's begin. The forest had never felt this cold. Lena Rowan stood frozen between two pine trees, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps that turned to mist in the frigid air. The moon was full overhead, casting silver light across the clearing ahead, and in that clearing stood the two people who had just destroyed her life. Marcus Hale, her bonded mate, had his arms wrapped around another woman. Lena's knees buckled. She caught herself against the rough bark of a tree, her fingers digging into the wood until splinters bit into her skin. The pain was nothing compared to what was happening inside her chest. The bond, the sacred, unbreakable bond that had tied her to Marcus for 3 years, was screaming. It felt like a rope made of fire and glass wound tight around her heart, and now someone was pulling it apart strand by strand. Every breath sent a fresh wave of agony through her ribs. Her wolf whimpered deep inside her mind, a sound of pure animal terror. This can't be happening. But it was. Marcus pulled back from the woman. Serena Blackwood, daughter of one of the most powerful bloodlines in Stonefall, and cupped her face with both hands. Lena couldn't hear what he was saying, but she saw the tenderness in his eyes, the same tenderness he'd once shown her. Serena laughed, a bright, beautiful sound that cut through the night like a blade. Lena's stomach twisted. She wanted to look away. She needed to run. But her body wouldn't obey. She stood there, trembling, watching the man she'd given everything to choose someone else. "You're sure about this?" Serena's voice carried across the clearing, low and sweet. "Once we announce it, there's no going back." Marcus smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything." "But what about her? Your bond?" Lena's breath caught. Marcus's expression didn't change. "Lena was a mistake, a young, stupid mistake. She's weak, Serena. No bloodline, no power, no connections. She was never going to be enough." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Lena staggered backward, her vision blurring. The bond inside her convulsed, twisting like a living thing in its death throes. She pressed a hand to her chest, gasping, as pain exploded through every nerve. No, 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 no. She'd heard the stories. Every wolf knew what happened when a bond broke without being severed properly. The mind fractured first. Hallucinations, madness, violent outbursts. Then the body followed. Wolves had died from broken bonds, died screaming, clawing at their own skin, begging for mercy that never came. She had to get out of here, now. Lena turned and ran. Branches whipped at her face and arms as she crashed through the underbrush. Her boots slipped on wet leaves, but she didn't slow down. She couldn't. Behind her, she heard Marcus call out, but whether he was calling her name or Serena's, she didn't know. Didn't care. The pain in her chest was getting worse. It felt like her ribcage was cracking open, like something inside her was trying to claw its way out. Her wolf was howling now, a desperate, mournful sound that echoed through her skull. "You're dying," a small, rational part of her mind whispered. "The bond is killing you." She knew. She knew, but what was she supposed to do? She couldn't sever a bond alone. It took two, the original pair, or someone strong enough to overwrite the first mark. And who would do that for her? Who would want a broken, worthless wolf with no name and no future? Her foot caught on a root, and she went down hard. The impact drove the air from her lungs, and for a moment she lay there on the forest floor gasping like a fish out of water. The world tilted and spun. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. "Get up," she told herself. "Get up or die here." With a sob that was half scream, Lena dragged herself to her feet. Blood trickled down her temple where she'd hit her head, warm and sticky. She wiped it away with the back of her hand and kept moving. She didn't know how long she walked. Time had lost all meaning. The pain consumed everything, thought, sense, reason. She moved on instinct alone, her wolf guiding her through the dark with the single-minded determination of a creature that refused to die. When she finally stumbled out of the forest, she found herself on a dirt road she didn't recognize. and ahead, barely visible through the trees, was a building. It was small and rough, built from weathered timber with a sagging roof and smoke rising from a crooked chimney. A tavern, by the look of it. The kind of place travelers stopped when they had nowhere else to go. Lena's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the road, her hands sinking into the cold mud. Her whole body was shaking now, violent tremors that rattled her teeth. The bond was a writhing mass of agony in her chest, tearing her apart from the inside. She was out of time. Crawling. She was crawling now, dragging herself toward the tavern like a wounded animal. Each movement sent fresh shockwaves of pain through her, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The door was right there, just a few more feet. Her hand hit the wood, and she used the last of her strength to bang on it. Once, twice. The door swung open, and warm light spilled out into the night. A man stood in the doorway, backlit, so she couldn't see his face, but she could smell him. Wolf. Strong. Unfamiliar. "Please," Lena whispered. Her voice was barely audible, raw and broken. "Please, help me." And then the world went black. She woke to warmth. For a disorienting moment, Lena thought she was home. In her small cabin on the edge of Stonefall, curled up under the quilt her mother had made before she died. Safe. Whole. Then the pain hit, and she remembered. Marcus. Serena. The bond. Lena's eyes snapped open. She was lying on a narrow bed in a dim room that smelled of wood smoke and herbs. A fireplace crackled in the corner, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. And sitting in a chair beside the bed, watching her with eyes the color of a summer forest, was a man she'd never seen before. He was maybe 30, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. Hard angles, sharp cheekbones, a mouth that didn't look like it smiled often. He wore simple traveling clothes, dark trousers, a loose linen shirt, boots caked with road dust. But it was his eyes that held her. Green and intense, they studied her with an expression she couldn't read. Not quite pity, not quite curiosity. Wariness. "You're awake," he said. His voice was low and rough, like gravel underfoot. Lena tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. She fell back against the pillow with a gasp, clutching at her chest. The bond was still there, still dying, still ripping her apart. "Don't move," the man said. It wasn't a suggestion. "Who?" Her throat was dry, the word coming out as a croak. "Adrian." He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. "You collapsed outside. The tavern keeper brought you in. That was 4 hours ago." 4 hours? How was she still alive? As if reading her mind, Adrian's gaze dropped to her chest, where her hand was pressed over her heart. "Your bond is breaking," he said quietly. "You don't have much time." Tears burned behind Lena's eyes. She already knew that. Hearing it out loud made it worse. "Can you—" She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "Can you sever it?" Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do." Lena's voice was stronger now, fueled by desperation. "I need someone to mark me, to create a new bond, and destroy the old one. I know it's dangerous. I know it's invasive and permanent, and—" Her breath hitched. "But if I don't, I'm going to die. You don't know me. I don't care." Silence filled the room. Adrian stared at her, his jaw tight, and Lena stared back. She could see the refusal forming in his eyes, could feel the rejection coming like another knife to the chest. "Please." Her voice broke on the word. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking for anything except my life. Just, please." Adrian stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. He turned away from her, his hands curling into fists at his sides. For a long moment, he said nothing. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, he spoke. "If I do this, we can never meet again. You understand that?" Lena's heart lurched. "Yes, I'm not a good man. I'm not what you think I am. I don't care what you are. You should. Well, I don't." Lena pushed herself up onto her elbows, ignoring the way her vision swam. Whatever you are, whoever you are, it doesn't matter. Because I'm already dead. So please, just lie back down. The command in his voice was absolute. Lena obeyed without thinking, her body responding to the alpha authority that radiated from him like heat. Adrian turned back to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't kind. It was something else entirely, something old and sad and resigned. "This will hurt," he said. "Everything already hurts." A ghost of something, not quite a smile, touched his mouth. "Not like this." He moved to the side of the bed and knelt beside it, bringing them eye to eye. Up close, Lena could see the scars that traced faint lines along his jaw and the column of his throat. Battle scars. Old ones. "Last chance," Adrian said. "Once I do this, it's done. There's no undoing it." "I know. Your wolf will recognize me as your mate. She'll bind to me." "I know. And when I leave, I know." Lena's voice was steady now, even as her hands shook. "I know all of it. And I'm asking anyway." Adrian studied her for one more heartbeat. Then he nodded. "Close your eyes." She did. His hand was warm when it touched her neck, fingers curling gently around the side of her throat. Lena's pulse jumped beneath his palm, but she forced herself to stay still. "Breathe," Adrian murmured. She did. In. Out. In. And then his teeth sank into the curve of her shoulder, and the world exploded. The pain was instant and absolute. It felt like being struck by lightning, like every nerve in her body was set on fire all at once. Lena screamed, her back arching off the bed, but Adrian's hand held her in place. His other arm came around her waist, pinning her against him as his teeth dug deeper. Inside her chest, the old bond shattered. It didn't fade. It didn't gently dissolve. It broke like glass, 1,000 razor-sharp pieces that tore through her before vanishing into nothing. Lena sobbed, tears streaming down her face, her hands fisting in the fabric of Adrian's shirt. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The pain didn't disappear, but it changed. The agony of the dying bond was gone, replaced by something else, something warm and strong and alive. It poured into her like sunlight, filling the empty, broken places Marcus had left behind. A new bond, Adrian's bond. Lena's wolf stopped howling. She went quiet, and then, impossibly, she purred. Slowly, carefully, Adrian released his bite. His tongue swept over the mark, soothing the torn skin, and Lena shuddered at the sensation. When he pulled back, his eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw something unguarded in his expression. Regret. "It's done," he said quietly. Lena couldn't speak. She could only stare at him, her hand pressed to the fresh mark on her shoulder. She could feel it, the bond, thrumming between them like a living thread. Strong, unbreakable, real. "How do you feel?" Adrian asked. "Alive?" The word came out as barely more than a whisper. "I feel alive." He nodded and stood, putting distance between them. The regret in his eyes hardened into something colder, more controlled. "Good. Then my part's done." Lena's stomach dropped. "Wait. Get some rest. In the morning, the tavern keeper will give you supplies and directions to the nearest town. You'll be safe there." "You're leaving?" "I told you. We can't meet again." "But—" Lena struggled to sit up, panic rising in her chest. The bond pulled tight, protesting the distance between them. "You just marked me. We're bonded. You can't just—" "I can." Adrian's voice was flat, final. "And I am." He crossed to the door, his movements quick and deliberate, like he was trying to outrun something. His hand closed around the handle, and Lena felt the bond stretch, a painful tug that made her gasp. "Adrian, please." He paused, didn't turn around. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena. Lena Rowan." "Lena Rowan," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. Then so softly she almost didn't hear, he added, "I'm sorry." And he walked out. The door closed behind him with a quiet click, and Lena was alone. She sat there in the dim room, one hand pressed to the mark on her shoulder, the other clutching the blanket. The bond hummed inside her, alive and warm and utterly one-sided. She could feel Adrian on the other end of it, moving away, leaving. A fresh wave of tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time they weren't from pain. She didn't know who he was, didn't know why he'd helped her, or why he'd walked away. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her life had just changed forever, and she had no idea what came next. The next morning, Lena woke to find a pack waiting for her by the door. Inside were traveling clothes, a water skin, dried meat, bread, and a small pouch of coins. Enough to get her to the next town, enough to start over. There was no note, no explanation, just the pack, and the mark on her shoulder that still tinged when she touched it. The tavern keeper, a gruff older man with kind eyes, told her the stranger had paid for everything and left before dawn. Didn't say where he was going, the man added, watching her carefully, but he made me promise to see you safe on the road. Gave me extra coin for it, too. Lena nodded numbly. She slung the pack over her shoulder, wincing as the strap pressed against the fresh mark, and stepped out into the cold morning. The road stretched in both directions, empty and silent. She chose east, away from Stonefall, away from Marcus and Serena and everything she'd lost, toward whatever came next. Basti. For 3 days, Lena walked. She avoided the main roads, sticking to forest paths and game trails where she was less likely to run into other wolves. The bond was still new, still settling, and she didn't want to risk anyone sensing it. Questions would be asked, questions she couldn't answer. At night, she made small camps in clearings or beneath the shelter of thick pines. She ate sparingly, rationing the supplies Adrian had left her. And when she slept, she dreamed of green eyes and a voice that said, "I'm sorry." The bond didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. She could feel him sometimes, on the other end of the thread that tied them together. Not his thoughts or his emotions. The bond wasn't deep enough for that yet, but his presence. A steady, solid weight that anchored her. It should have been comforting. Instead, it made her ache. On the 4th day, she reached a town. It was small, just a cluster of buildings around a central square, but it was lively. Market stalls lined the streets, selling everything from fresh bread to leather goods. The smell of roasting meat made Lena's stomach growl. She kept her head down as she moved through the crowd, her hand instinctively going to her shoulder. The mark was hidden beneath her shirt, but she could still feel it, a constant reminder. "You lost, girl?" Lena jumped and turned to find an older woman watching her from behind a vegetable stall. She had sharp eyes and a sharper smile. "No," Lena said quickly. "Just passing through." "Mm-hmm." The woman didn't look convinced. "You got that look about you, like you're running from something." "I'm not Everyone's running from something, dear. Question is, what are you running to?" Lena didn't have an answer for that. The woman chuckled and waved a hand. "Go on, then. But if you need work, old Miller's always looking for help at the mill. Pays fair. Asks no questions." "Thank you," Lena murmured and moved on. She found a small inn at the edge of town and paid for a room with some of Adrian's coins. It was clean and quiet, with a narrow bed and a window that looked out over the forest. Lena sat on the edge of the bed and pressed her hand to the mark on her shoulder. "Where are you?" she thought, sending the question down the bond. There was no answer. There never was. But she could feel him. Still there. Still alive. And for now, that was enough. A week passed. Then 2. Lena took the job at the mill. It was hard work, lifting sacks of grain, operating the heavy grindstone, but it kept her busy, kept her mind occupied. The townspeople were curious about her at first, but when she offered no explanations, they stopped asking. She was just another drifter, another nobody. She told herself she was fine with that. At night, alone in her small room, she traced the mark on her shoulder and wondered if Adrian ever thought about her, if he felt the bond the way she did, if he regretted what he'd done. She told herself it didn't matter, but late at night, when the bond pulled tight in her chest and she couldn't sleep, she knew she was lying. Quote, It was a month after the marking when the soldiers came. Lena was at the mill, hauling a sack of grain toward the grindstone when she heard the commotion outside. Shouting, the thunder of hooves, she dropped the sack and ran to the window. A group of riders had entered the town square, a dozen men in dark armor, bearing a sigil she didn't recognize. A silver wolf on a black field. Royal Guards. Lena's heart stopped. No, it can't be. The captain of the guard dismounted and approached the inn where Lena was staying. She watched, frozen, as the innkeeper came out to meet him. They spoke for a moment, and then the innkeeper pointed, directly at the mill. Lena's blood turned to ice. "They're here for me." She didn't know how they'd found her, didn't know what they wanted, but every instinct screamed at her to run. She turned and bolted for the back door, but she wasn't fast enough. 2 guards were already there, blocking her path. One of them stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Lena Rowan?" he asked. She didn't answer. Her wolf snarled inside her mind, ready to fight, but Lena forced her down. There were too many of them. She wouldn't win. The guard inclined his head. "By order of His Majesty, King Adrian Vane, you are summoned to the capital." The world tilted. King Adrian Vane, the stranger who'd marked her, the man who'd saved her life and walked away, was the Alpha King. Lena's knees buckled, and she would have fallen if one of the guards hadn't caught her arm. "You will come with us," the captain said. It wasn't a request. "Now." And just like that, Lena's new life shattered all over again. The journey to the capital took 5 days. 5 days in a guarded carriage that felt more like a cage. 5 days of silence, broken only by the rumble of wheels and the occasional barked order from the guards. 5 days of Lena's mind spinning in circles, trying to make sense of what had happened. Adrian was a king. The stranger who'd knelt beside her bed and marked her to save her life was the Alpha King of the entire realm, and now she was being dragged to his palace like a criminal. Lena sat rigid on the velvet bench, her hands clenched in her lap. Across from her sat a woman in dark robes, a royal attendant, judging by the silver insignia pinned to her chest. She hadn't spoken a word since they'd left the town, but her eyes never left Lena. Watching, judging. The bond thrummed in Lena's chest, growing stronger with every mile. She could feel Adrian now, not just as a distant presence, but as something immediate and overwhelming. He was close, getting closer. Her wolf was restless, pacing inside her mind, desperate to see him. Lena forced her down. She couldn't afford to lose control. Not now. When the carriage finally rolled through the gates of the capital, Lena's breath caught. She'd never seen anything like it. The city sprawled in every direction, a maze of cobblestone streets and stone buildings that climbed toward the sky. Banners bearing the silver wolf sigil hung from every lamppost. The streets were packed with people, merchants, soldiers, nobles in fine clothes. The noise was deafening after weeks of silence, and at the center of it all, rising like a mountain, was the palace. It was enormous. White stone walls, towering spires, windows that glittered like diamonds in the afternoon sun. Lena had heard stories about it, whispered tales from travelers passing through Stonefall, but seeing it in person made her chest tighten. This was Adrian's world, and she didn't belong in it. The carriage came to a halt in a wide courtyard. The attendant rose and gestured for Lena to follow. When Lena stepped out, her legs nearly gave out. She hadn't stood in days, and her muscles screamed in protest. A guard caught her elbow. "Steady!" She pulled away from him, forcing herself to stand upright. Around her, more guards flanked the courtyard, their expressions unreadable. Servants in crisp uniforms hurried past, casting quick, curious glances her way. Lena could feel their stares like physical touches. She pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, covering the mark. "This way," the attendant said, her voice cold and clipped. Lena followed her through a side entrance and into the palace itself. The halls were massive, with vaulted ceilings and floors of polished marble. Tapestries hung on the walls, depicting battles and hunts and wolves running beneath the moon. Everywhere she looked, there was gold. On the frames, the chandeliers, the doorknobs. It was beautiful. It was suffocating. They climbed a staircase that seemed to go on forever, then walked down another hall and another. Lena lost count of the turns. Finally, the attendant stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. "You will wait here," she said. "Someone will come for you." "Wait for what?" Lena asked. The woman didn't answer. She opened the door, gestured for Lena to enter, and then left without another word. Lena stood in the doorway, staring into the room beyond. It was a suite, larger than any place she'd ever lived. A four-poster bed dominated one wall, draped in deep blue silk. There was a sitting area with plush chairs, a writing desk, a wardrobe that looked like it could fit a dozen people. A door on the far side stood slightly ajar, revealing a bathing room beyond. Lena stepped inside, and the door closed behind her with a soft click. She was alone. For a moment she just stood there, her heart pounding. Then slowly she crossed to the window and looked out. The view was staggering. She could see the entire city spread out below, the streets winding like rivers between the buildings. Beyond the walls, the forest stretched to the horizon, dark and endless. Somewhere out there was Stonefall, Marcus, Serena, her old life. Lena pressed her hand to the glass, her reflection staring back at her. She looked like a ghost, pale, thin, shadows beneath her eyes. What was she doing here? Before she could spiral further, a knock sounded at the door. Lena spun around. "Come in." The door opened and a young woman entered. She was small and pretty, with auburn hair pulled back in a braid and a warm smile. "Miss Rowan, I'm Clara. I've been assigned to assist you during your stay." "Assist me with what?" Clara's smile didn't waver. "Whatever you need. His Majesty has requested your presence in the throne room tomorrow morning, but tonight you're to rest. I've drawn a bath for you and there are fresh clothes in the wardrobe. If you're hungry, I can have food sent up." Lena's head spun. "I don't understand. Why am I here?" Clara's expression faltered just for a second. "I'm not privy to His Majesty's decisions, miss. I'm only here to help." "Then help me understand, please." Clara's voice was gentle but firm. "Take the night. Rest. Tomorrow, you'll have your answers." Lena wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up with her. The journey, the shock, the constant pull of the bond, it was too much. "Fine," she said quietly. Clara smiled again. "Wonderful. I'll return in an hour with dinner." She left, and Lena was alone again. The bath was hot and scented with lavender. Lena sank into it with a groan, letting the heat seep into her aching muscles. She stayed there until the water grew cold, then dragged herself out and wrapped herself in a robe that was far too fine for someone like her. When Clara returned with a tray of food, roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables she didn't even recognize, Lena ate mechanically, tasting nothing. That night she lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling. The bond was stronger than ever. She could feel Adrian somewhere in the palace, close enough that her wolf whined with the need to go to him. But Lena stayed where she was, because she didn't know what she'd say if she saw him, and she wasn't sure she wanted to find out. Morning came too quickly. Clara arrived at dawn with a dress, deep green silk that shimmered in the light. Lena stared at it like it might bite her. "I can't wear that." "You must," Clara said gently. "You're meeting the king." "I've already met the king." Clara's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't ask. She simply held out the dress, waiting. Lena took it with shaking hands. It fit perfectly, too perfectly, like it had been made for her. Clara helped her lace the back, then brushed out her hair and pinned it away from her face. When Lena looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. "You look beautiful," Clara said softly. Lena didn't feel beautiful. She felt like a fraud. 2 guards arrived to escort her. They led her through the palace, down more twisting halls, until they reached a set of massive double doors. The throne room. The guards pushed the doors open and Lena's breath left her in a rush. The room was huge, with soaring ceilings and walls lined with columns. Sunlight streamed through high windows, casting golden light across the floor. And at the far end, on a raised platform, sat a throne carved from black stone. And on that throne sat Adrian. Lena's knees nearly buckled. He looked different, not like the traveler she'd met in the tavern, but like a king. He wore dark, formal clothing, a silver circlet resting on his brow. His expression was cold and distant, his green eyes unreadable. But the bond flared the moment their gazes met, hot and undeniable. "Approach," a voice called. Lena forced her legs to move. She walked down the long aisle between the columns, acutely aware of the dozens of people lining the walls. Nobles, she realized, courtiers, all of them watching her. When she reached the base of the platform, she stopped. Adrian rose from the throne and descended the steps. He moved with the same controlled grace she remembered, every motion deliberate. He stopped 3 feet away from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adrian inclined his head. "Lena Rowan." His voice was formal, detached, like she was a stranger. Lena's hands curled into fists at her sides. "Your Majesty." The title tasted like ash. Adrian's jaw tightened, but his expression didn't change. I owe you an explanation. You think? A murmur rippled through the room. Lena ignored it. Adrian's eyes flickered with something, amusement, annoyance, but it was gone before she could be sure. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't a request. He turned and strode toward a side door, and Lena had no choice but to follow. They stepped into a smaller chamber, and the door closed behind them, cutting off the whispers. It was a sitting room, with large windows overlooking the gardens and a fire crackling in the hearth. Adrian turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something real in his eyes. Exhaustion. I didn't plan this, he said quietly. Didn't plan what? Marking me? Lying to me? Dragging me here? Any of it. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so unguarded it made her chest ache. When I marked you, I thought I could walk away. I thought... He stopped, his jaw working. I thought it would be better for both of us if you never knew who I was. Why? Because this? He gestured around them. This world, this life, it destroys people. And you'd already been through enough. Lena stared at him. So you were protecting me? I was trying to. By abandoning me? Adrian flinched, actually flinched. I didn't abandon you, he said, his voice rough. I made sure you had everything you needed, money, supplies, a safe place to go. I didn't need supplies, Lena's voice cracked. I needed answers. I needed to understand what happened, why you walked away, why... She stopped, her throat closing. You marked me. You created a bond, and then you disappeared. I had to. Why? Because I'm the king. The words echoed through the room, sharp and final. Adrian's eyes blazed. Do you understand what that means? Every decision I make affects thousands of lives. Every alliance, every marriage, every... He stopped, his hands curling into fists. I can't just mark someone on a whim. I can't just... Is that what I was? A whim? No. The word was immediate, forceful. No, Lena. You were... He turned away, his shoulders tight. You were dying. I couldn't let that happen. So you saved me out of pity. I saved you because I couldn't watch you die. The bond flared between them, hot and insistent. Lena took a step closer. Then why did you bring me here? Adrian was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because the bond doesn't lie. And when you're bonded to the king, people notice. Lena's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Adrian turned back to her, and the exhaustion in his eyes was clearer now. The court knows. The nobles, the advisors, they all know I marked someone. And they want to know who. But I'm nobody. You're my mate. The words hung in the air between them. That makes you dangerous. Before Lena could respond, the door burst open. A man strode in, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair shot through with silver. He wore the insignia of a high-ranking advisor, and his expression was thunderous. Your Majesty, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. We need to talk. Adrian's expression went cold. Lord Corwin, I don't recall summoning you. And I don't recall you consulting the council before bonding a commoner. Corwin's gaze slid to Lena, and the contempt in his eyes made her skin crawl. This is the girl? Watch your tone, Adrian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. Corwin ignored him. He circled Lena like a predator sizing up prey. No bloodline, no connections, no power. He stopped in front of her, his lip curling. Tell me, girl, how did you trick the king into marking you? Lena's wolf snarled. I didn't trick anyone. No? Then explain to me how a nobody from the border ends up bonded to the most powerful man in the realm. That's enough, Adrian snapped. It's not enough. Corwin whirled on him. The council is in chaos. Half of them think she's a spy. The other half thinks she's a manipulator. And the noble families... He laughed bitterly. They're circling like vultures. Lady Isolde's already demanding an investigation. Isolde can demand whatever she wants. I don't answer to her. You answer to the realm, Corwin's voice rose. And the realm deserves a queen who can strengthen our alliances, not some stray you picked up in a tavern. The words hit like a slap. Lena's hands trembled, but she forced herself to stay still, to stay silent. Adrian stepped forward, his presence filling the room like a storm. "Get out." "Your Majesty." "Get out." Corwin's jaw tightened, but he bowed stiffly and left, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the fire. "Is that what they all think? That I tricked you?" Adrian's expression was unreadable. "It doesn't matter what they think. It does if they're right. They're not." "Then what am I doing here?" Lena's voice broke. "If I'm such a liability, why bring me to the palace? Why not just reject the bond and be done with it?" Adrian stared at her, and for the first time she saw something raw in his eyes. "Because I can't." The bond pulsed between them, warm and insistent. "I tried," Adrian continued, his voice low. "After I left you, I tried to ignore it, to bury it. But the bond—" He shook his head. "It doesn't work that way. Every day it got stronger. And when I heard the council was planning to send soldiers to find you, to question you," his hands curled into fists, "I couldn't let them hurt you." Lena's breath caught. "So you brought me here to protect me?" "Yes." "From your own court?" "Yes." She laughed, a bitter sound. "That's insane." "I know." They stood there 2 feet apart, the bond singing between them. And then Lena made a decision. She crossed the distance between them and stopped inches away, forcing him to meet her eyes. "If I'm going to survive this," she said quietly, "I need to know the truth. All of it. Why did you really mark me?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "I told you." "No, you told me you couldn't watch me die. But there's more, isn't there?" For a long moment he said nothing. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, he spoke. "When I saw you that night, broken, desperate, dying, I saw myself." Lena's breath hitched. "I've spent my entire life being what everyone else needed me to be," Adrian continued. "The perfect king, the strong alpha, the strategist, the warrior, the—" He stopped, his throat working. "I've never been allowed to just be. And when I looked at you, I saw someone who'd lost everything and was still fighting to survive. And I thought—" His voice cracked. "I thought maybe if I saved you, I could save something in myself." Lena's eyes burned. "So yes," Adrian said, "I marked you to save your life, but I also did it because, for the first time in years, I wanted something that wasn't about duty or politics or strategy. I wanted to do something good." A tear slipped down Lena's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "And now?" she whispered. Adrian reached up, his hand hovering near her face as if he wanted to touch her but didn't dare. "Now," he said, "I have to figure out how to keep you alive in a court that wants you gone." Before Lena could respond, a bell tolled somewhere in the palace, deep and resonant. Adrian's expression hardened. "That's the council summons. They're convening an emergency session." "About me?" "Yes." Lena's stomach twisted. "What do I do?" Adrian's hand finally touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away the tear. The contact sent a jolt through the bond, and Lena's wolf purred. "You stand with me," he said, "and you don't let them see you break." The council chamber was even more intimidating than the throne room. It was circular, with a domed ceiling painted with constellations. A long table dominated the center, surrounded by high-backed chairs, and in those chairs sat the most powerful people in the realm. Lena recognized Lord Corwin immediately. He sat to the right of the head chair, his expression smug. Beside him was a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, Lady Isolde, Lena assumed. She looked at Lena the way one might look at an insect. There were others, a dozen council members, all of them radiating authority and disdain. Adrian took his seat at the head of the table, and Lena stood behind him, her hands clasped to keep them from shaking. "Let's begin," Adrian said, his voice cold and formal. Lord Corwin cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, the council has convened to address the matter of your recent bonding." "I'm aware." "Then you understand our concerns." "I understand that you're overstepping." A murmur ran through the room. Lady Isolde leaned forward. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, this is not a personal matter. The bond you've formed affects the entire realm. We have a right, a duty, to question it." Question it all you want, Adrian said. It doesn't change the fact that it's done. But was it done legitimately? Corwin's voice was sharp. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but the circumstances are suspicious. A commoner with no connection suddenly bonded to the king? It reeks of manipulation. Lena's hands curled into fists. Careful, Corwin, Adrian said softly. I'm only speaking the truth. The girl has a name, Lena snapped. Every eye turned to her. Corwin's expression darkened. Excuse me? I have a name, Lena repeated, her voice stronger now. It's Lena Rowan, and I didn't manipulate anyone. Then explain how this happened, Lady Isolde said coldly. How does a girl from the border end up bonded to the king? Lena's heart pounded, but she forced herself to meet the woman's gaze. I was dying, she said. My bond was breaking, and I was going to die. The king saved my life. How noble, Corwin said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. And what did you offer him in return? Nothing. Nothing? You expect us to believe— I don't care what you believe, Lena shot back. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. But it's done, and no amount of questioning is going to change it. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, arguing, accusing. Lena stood frozen, her pulse racing, and then Adrian stood. The room fell silent. Enough, he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The bond is legitimate. Lena Rowan is my mate, and anyone who questions that is questioning me. Lord Corwin's jaw tightened. Your Majesty, we're not questioning your authority. We're questioning her motives. Then let me make this clear. Adrian's gaze swept the room, hard and unyielding. Lena is under my protection. Anyone who threatens her, insults her, or attempts to harm her will answer to me, personally. The threat hung in the air. Lady Isolde's expression was cold. This is a mistake, Your Majesty. The realm will not accept a queen with no bloodline. Then the realm will learn, Adrian said. And with that he turned and walked out, Lena hurrying to follow. They didn't stop until they were back in the private sitting room, the door firmly closed behind them. Lena's legs gave out and she sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. Adrian knelt in front of her, his hands covering hers. You did well, he said quietly. Lena laughed, a broken sound. They hate me. They fear you. There's a difference. What do I do now? Adrian's grip tightened. You survive, and you let me handle the rest. But even as he said it, Lena knew the truth. This was only the beginning, and the worst was yet to come. The worst came faster than Lena expected. 3 days after the council meeting, whispers began to spread through the palace like poison. Servants stopped talking when she passed. Guards watched her with suspicious eyes. Even Clara, who'd been nothing but kind, grew cautious, her smiles tighter, her words more careful. Lena heard the rumors in fragments, bits of conversation caught through half-open doors, murmurs that died the moment she entered a room. She seduced him, used dark magic, planned it all from the beginning. The bond was a lie, a trick, a manipulation. She wasn't his mate. She was a parasite. Each word cut deeper than the last, but Lena kept her head high. She'd survived Marcus's betrayal. She'd survived a dying bond. She could survive this. At least that's what she told herself. Adrian had disappeared into endless meetings with the council, emerging only late at night, exhausted and tense. When they did see each other, the conversations were brief, strained. He was trying to protect her, she knew that. But the distance between them grew wider with each passing day, and the bond ached with it. On the fourth morning, Clara arrived with a summons. Lady Isolde has requested your presence in the East Parlor, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Lena's stomach nodded. Why? She didn't say, but Clara hesitated. It's not a request you can refuse. Lena dressed in one of the simpler gowns from the wardrobe, deep blue, high-necked, no ornamentation, armor disguised as silk. Then she followed Clara through the labyrinth of halls to a sunlit room overlooking the gardens. Lady Isolde sat in a chair by the window, a teacup balanced delicately in her hand. She was older than Lena had first thought, maybe 60, but her spine was straight as steel and her eyes missed nothing. Sit, Isolde said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Lena sat. For a long moment, Isolde simply studied her, sipping her tea with maddening calm. Then she set the cup down with a soft click. You're younger than I expected, Isolde said. I'm 23. A child. Isolde's tone was dismissive. Tell me, Miss Rowan, do you have any idea what you've done? Lena's hands tightened in her lap. I haven't done anything. Haven't you? Isolde leaned forward slightly. You've disrupted the most important alliance negotiation in a decade. You've thrown the court into chaos. You've made enemies of families who've served this realm for generations. All because you decided to throw yourself at the king. I didn't throw myself at anyone. Then explain how a nobody from Stonefall ends up bonded to the Alpha King. Lena had answered this question a dozen times already, but she forced herself to stay calm. I was dying, my bond was breaking, the king saved my life. How convenient. It wasn't convenient, it was survival. Isolde's eyes narrowed. And the fact that he's the most powerful man in the realm had nothing to do with it? I didn't know who he was. So you claim. Isolde sat back, her expression cold. But whether you knew or not is irrelevant. The damage is done, and now we're all paying for your recklessness. Lena's wolf snarled inside her mind, but she kept her voice level. What do you want from me? I want you to leave. The words landed like stones. The king won't allow that, Lena said. The king is blinded by misplaced obligation. He thinks he's protecting you, but he's really protecting his own conscience. Isolde's gaze was sharp as a blade. He marked you out of pity, girl. Nothing more. And the longer you stay, the more damage you do to his reign. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Isolde smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I've been in this court for 40 years. I've seen kings rise and fall. I've watched alliances crumble over far less than a scandalous bond. And I know that if you truly cared about him, you'd leave before you destroy him. The words hit harder than Lena wanted to admit. I'm not leaving, she said quietly. Then you're a fool. Isolde stood, smoothing her skirts. But perhaps that's fitting. Fools rarely survive in this world, Miss Rowan, and I suspect your time is running out faster than you think. She swept from the room without another word, leaving Lena alone with the cold certainty that something terrible was coming. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She paced her room, the bond pulling tight in her chest. Adrian was somewhere in the palace, close but unreachable, locked in yet another emergency council session. Around midnight, she gave up trying to rest and slipped out into the hall. The palace was different at night. The grand corridors felt vast and empty, lit only by the occasional torch. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floors, too loud in the silence. She didn't have a destination in mind. She just needed to move, to do something other than sit in that room and wait for the walls to close in. She turned a corner and nearly collided with someone. Easy there. Lena stumbled back and found herself face to face with a man she didn't recognize. He was tall, maybe 40, with sandy hair and a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. He wore the dark uniform of the royal guard, but his posture was relaxed, almost friendly. You're the king's mate, he said. It wasn't a question. Lena's hand went instinctively to her shoulder, covering the mark beneath her dress. Who are you? Captain Thorne, head of His Majesty's personal guard. He offered a slight bow. I've been meaning to introduce myself, but you've been, well, occupied. There was no judgment in his tone, only a wry amusement that caught Lena off guard. I should get back to my room, she said. At this hour? You'll be alone with your thoughts, and that's never a good thing in this place. Thorne gestured down the hall. Walk with me. I'll show you something that might help. Every instinct told her to refuse. But something in his expression, an understanding maybe, or simple kindness, made her nod. They walked in silence for several minutes, deeper into the palace than Lena had ventured before. Finally, Thorne stopped in front of a narrow door and pushed it open. Beyond was a staircase, spiraling upward into darkness. Where does this go? Lena asked. The North Tower. It's not used much anymore, but the view is worth the climb. He started up, and after a moment's hesitation, Lena followed. The stairs seemed endless, winding up and up until her legs burned and her breath came short. But finally they emerged onto a small circular platform open to the night sky. Lena gasped. The view was breathtaking. The entire city spread out below them, a tapestry of lights and shadows. Beyond the walls, the forest stretched dark and infinite beneath the stars. I come up here when the court gets too suffocating, Thorne said, leaning against the stone railing. Helps me remember there's a world outside these walls. Lena moved to the edge, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold wind. Why are you being kind to me? Why wouldn't I be? Everyone else thinks I'm a manipulator, or a spy, or worse. Thorne was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I've known Adrian since he was 18. Watched him become king. Watched him sacrifice everything for this realm. And in all those years, I've never seen him do something for himself. Not once. He looked at her. Until you. Lena's throat tightened. He marked me to save my life. That's not... He could have sent you to a healer. Could have found another wolf to mark you. Could have done a dozen different things that didn't involve binding himself to you permanently. Thorne's gaze was steady. But he didn't. He marked you himself. And that tells me everything I need to know. It tells you he's reckless. It tells me he's human. Thorne smiled faintly. The court doesn't want him to be human. They want a perfect king, a strategic machine who never feels, never wants, never makes mistakes. But that's not who he is. And I think, deep down, you remind him of that. Lena didn't know what to say to that. They stood in silence for a while, the wind whistling around them. Finally, Thorne straightened. Come on, I'll walk you back before someone notices you're gone and starts another round of rumors. They descended the stairs and made their way back through the quiet halls. When they reached Lena's door, Thorne paused. One more thing, he said. The Royal Summit is in 3 days. Lena frowned. What's that? An annual gathering where the king meets with the high lords and ladies of the realm. It's a formality, mostly. Renewing alliances, discussing trade agreements, that sort of thing. But this year, his expression grew serious. This year, you'll be there, and the nobles will use it as an opportunity to challenge your bond publicly. Lena's blood ran cold. Challenge it how? Questions, accusations, demands for proof that the bond is legitimate. They'll try to force Adrian to reject you in front of the entire assembly. Can they do that? They can try. Thorne's jaw tightened. And if they succeed, the bond will be annulled. You'll be cast out, possibly exiled. And Adrian, he stopped. It would weaken his position significantly. The nobles would see it as proof that he's unfit to rule. Lena's hands shook. So either way, I lose. Not if you fight. Thorne met her eyes. The summit is a battlefield, Miss Rowan, and if you're going to survive it, you need to stop thinking of yourself as a victim and start thinking of yourself as a queen. He left her with those words, disappearing down the hall before she could respond. Lena stood outside her door, her heart pounding. 3 days. She had 3 days to prepare for a fight she didn't know how to win. The next morning, Lena woke to chaos. Shouting echoed through the halls, followed by the heavy tread of boots. She threw on a robe and opened her door to find servants rushing past, their faces tight with fear. What's happening? She called out. No one answered. Lena grabbed Clara as she hurried by. Clara, what's going on? Clara's eyes were wide. There's been an attack. Someone tried to poison the king. The world tilted. Is he? He's alive. But... Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. They're saying it was meant for you. Lena's blood turned to ice. Before she could process that, a guard appeared at her door. Miss Rowan, you need to come with me. Now. She didn't argue. She followed him through the palace, her heart hammering, until they reached the throne room. Adrian stood in the center, surrounded by guards and council members. His face was pale, his expression furious. When he saw Lena, relief flashed across his features, quickly replaced by cold rage. Seal the palace, he ordered. No one enters or leaves until we find who's responsible. Lord Corwin stepped forward. Your Majesty, perhaps this incident should make us reconsider. Reconsider what? Adrian's voice was dangerous. The girl's presence. Clearly, someone sees her as a threat. And if her continued presence endangers the realm, if you're suggesting I cast her out to appease an assassin, you're more of a fool than I thought. Corwin's face reddened. I'm suggesting we consider all options. The only option is finding whoever did this and making an example of them. Adrian's gaze swept the room. Someone in this palace tried to kill my mate, and when I find them, they'll wish they'd never been born. The bond flared hot and fierce between them, and Lena felt his rage like a living thing. Lady Isolde spoke up, her voice icy. Your Majesty, with all due respect, this confirms what many of us have feared. The girl is a liability. Her presence has made you, and by extension the realm, vulnerable. Then perhaps the problem isn't Lena, Adrian said coldly. Perhaps the problem is the vipers in my own court. A dangerous silence fell. Isolde's expression didn't change, but her eyes glittered with something sharp. Be careful, Your Majesty. Accusations like that require proof. Then let's find some. Adrian turned to Thorn. I want every servant, every guard, every noble questioned. Someone knows something. Find them. Thorn bowed and left, taking half the guards with him. The council dispersed slowly, their whispers following them like shadows. When the room was finally empty, except for Adrian and Lena, he crossed to her in 3 long strides. Are you hurt? He demanded, his hands framing her face. No, I'm fine. But Adrian, someone tried to kill you. Clara said it was meant for me, but you... The poison was in wine sent to your room. I intercepted it. His jaw was tight. If I hadn't tested it first, Lena's breath caught. You drank it? Just enough to identify it. I've built up tolerance to most common poisons. But if you'd taken even a sip, his hands tightened on her face. You'd be dead. The bond pulsed between them, tight and frantic. This is because of me, Lena whispered. Because I'm here, because of the bond. This is because someone in my court is a traitor. Adrian's eyes blazed. And I'm going to find them. But even as he said it, Lena saw the truth in his eyes. He couldn't protect her from everyone, and the next attack might succeed. The investigation turned up nothing. No witnesses, no evidence. Whoever had sent the poison had covered their tracks perfectly. The palace remained on lockdown, but the tension only grew worse. Nobles prowled the halls like wolves scenting blood. Servants whispered behind closed doors, and Lena felt the weight of 100 hostile stares everywhere she went. 2 days before the summit, Adrian summoned her to his private study. It was a smaller room than she'd expected, lined with books and maps. A fire burned in the hearth, but the warmth didn't reach the rest of the space. Adrian stood by the window, his back to her. Close the door, he said. Lena did, her heart sinking at his tone. He turned to face her, and the exhaustion in his eyes was staggering. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. Lena's stomach dropped. What? The summit. The nobles are planning something. Thorn told me. They're going to challenge the bond. It's worse than that. Adrian moved to his desk and picked up a piece of parchment. Lord Corwin has been gathering support. He's convinced half the noble families that you're a threat to the realm, and he's planning to call for a formal vote during the summit. A vote on what? On whether the bond should be annulled. Lena's legs went weak. Can they do that? Technically, no. A mate bond can't be broken by vote. Adrian's expression was grim. But if enough of the High Lords demand it, they can force me to choose between you and the throne. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. They'll make you abdicate, Lena whispered. Yes, so I have to leave. No. Adrian crossed to her, his hands gripping her shoulders. You're not leaving. I won't let them force you out. But if staying means you lose the throne, then I lose the throne. His voice was fierce. I don't care, Lena. I'm not letting you go. Tears burned in her eyes. You'd give up everything? For me? In a heartbeat. The bond flared between them, hot and desperate, and before Lena could stop herself, she kissed him. It was messy and fierce and born of fear and desperation. Adrian made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, his hands tangling in her hair. The bond sang, the connection between them blazing to life, like it had been waiting for this. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I can't lose you, he whispered. You won't. Lena's voice was shaking. But I'm not letting you lose everything either. Lena, there has to be another way, something we're not seeing. Adrian pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. Like what? Lena's mind raced. There had to be something, some move they could make, some piece they were missing. And then it hit her. The bond, she said slowly. They keep saying it's not legitimate, that I manipulated you or tricked you or... You didn't. I know, but what if we proved it? Not with words, but with evidence. Adrian frowned. What kind of evidence? The mark. Lena touched her shoulder. It's a true mate mark. That's not something that can be faked, right? No. A true mark carries the essence of both wolves. It's unmistakable. Then have it examined, publicly, during the summit. Lena's words came faster now. If a healer or a seer confirms that the bond is real, that it's legitimate, then Corwin and the others can't claim it's a trick. Adrian was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. It could work, he said slowly, but it would also expose you. The examination would be invasive, painful, and it would happen in front of the entire court. I don't care. Lena's voice was steady. If it's the only way to prove the truth, I'll do it. Adrian cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. You're braver than you know. I'm terrified. That's what makes it brave. He kissed her again, softer this time, and Lena let herself believe just for a moment that everything might be okay. But deep down, she knew the real battle was still ahead. The day of the summit arrived cold and clear. Lena dressed in a gown of deep crimson, Claire's choice, meant to project strength and confidence. Her hair was braided in an intricate crown, and the mark on her shoulder was left uncovered, visible for all to see. She looked like a queen. She felt like she was walking to her execution. Adrian met her outside the grand hall, resplendent in formal black with the silver circlet of his office. His eyes swept over her, and something fierce and possessive flared in them. You look... He stopped, his jaw tightening. You look incredible. I look terrified. No one will see that but me. He offered his arm. Ready? No? Good. Neither am I. They walked into the hall together. The space was massive, with a vaulted ceiling and rows of seats arranged in a semicircle around a central platform. Every seat was filled. Nobles in fine clothes, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Guards lining the walls. Servants standing in the shadows. Hundreds of eyes, all fixed on Lena. Adrian led her to the platform and turned to face the assembly. The summit is now in session, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. Let's begin. Lord Corwin rose from his seat, his expression smug. Your Majesty, before we proceed with standard business, the Council requests that we address the matter of your recent bonding. I expected as much. Adrian's tone was cold. Speak your piece, Corwin. Corwin stepped forward, his gaze sliding to Lena. Miss Rowan, you claim to be the king's true mate, yet you have no bloodline, no standing, no proof of your legitimacy beyond the mark on your shoulder. The mark is proof, Lena said, forcing her voice to stay level. A mark can be faked. Magic exists that can mimic a true bond. That's a lie. Is it? Corwin's smile was cold. Then you won't mind submitting to an examination. A true bonding leaves a distinct magical signature. If your mark is real, it will show. If it's not, he paused, then you'll be revealed as the fraud you are. The hall erupted in whispers. Lena's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. I'll submit to the examination. Corwin's eyes gleamed. Excellent. I've taken the liberty of arranging for a seer to conduct it. Bring her in. The doors at the back of the hall opened, and a woman entered. She was ancient, her face lined with age, her eyes milky white. She moved with the aid of a staff, her steps slow but steady. A seer, one of the most powerful in the realm. Lena's stomach twisted. The seer approached the platform and bowed to Adrian. Your Majesty. Elara. Adrian's voice was tight. You're willing to perform the examination? I am. The seer's gaze turned to Lena, and despite her blindness, Lena felt pinned by that stare. Come, child, let me see what you are. Lena stepped forward, her hands trembling. Elara reached out, her fingers brushing Lena's shoulder where the mark lay hidden beneath the fabric. The moment she touched it, Lena gasped. It felt like fire, like ice, like every nerve in her body was alight. The seer's expression didn't change. She closed her eyes, her fingers tracing the mark with careful precision. The hall held its breath. And then Alara spoke, her voice ringing clear. This mark is true. Relief crashed through Lena so hard she nearly collapsed, but Alara wasn't finished. It is a true mate bond forged under duress and sealed in desperation. The connection is real. The magic is pure. She paused, her milky eyes opening. But there is something else. Lena's blood ran cold. What? Alara's gaze shifted to Adrian. Your Majesty, this bond was not the first for this girl. The hall exploded into chaos. Lena's vision swam. What? She bore another bond before this one, a bond that was severed violently, leaving scars on her soul. Alara's voice was grave. And those scars carry a curse. Adrian was beside her in an instant. What curse? A blood curse, placed by the one who broke the first bond. Alara's expression was grim. It is designed to destroy any new bond she forms, slowly, painfully, completely. Lena's knees gave out. Adrian caught her, but she barely felt it. Marcus. Marcus had cursed her. How long? Adrian's voice was a growl. The bond will hold for perhaps 3 months, maybe less. And when it breaks, Alara looked at them both. It will kill her, and likely take you with it, Your Majesty. The hall descended into pandemonium. Nobles shouted. Guards moved to contain the crowd. Corwin's voice rose above the rest, triumphant. You see? The bond is poisoned. She's a danger to the king, to the entire realm. Silence! Adrian's roar cut through the noise. The bond between them blazed, and Lena felt his fury like a living thing, but beneath the fury was something worse. Fear. There must be a way to break the curse, Adrian said to Alara. The seer's expression was sorrowful. Only the one who cast it can remove it. Marcus, the man who destroyed her once already. Lena looked up at Adrian, and in his eyes, she saw the truth. They were both already dead, unless she did the unthinkable. The silence that followed Alara's words was absolute. Then the hall erupted. Nobles surged to their feet, voices rising in a cacophony of outrage and triumph. Lord Corwin's face split into a victorious smile. Lady Isolda's expression remained cold, but satisfaction gleamed in her eyes. You see? Corwin's voice rang out. The bond is cursed. She'll destroy the king, destroy us all. She must be cast out immediately, before it's too late. The realm cannot afford... Enough! Adrian's voice cracked like thunder, silencing the room instantly. The bond between them flared so hot Lena gasped, and she felt his fury radiating outward like a physical force. One more word, and I'll have the guards clear this hall. The threat hung heavy in the air. Slowly the nobles sank back into their seats, but the hostility remained palpable. Adrian turned to Alara, his jaw tight. There has to be another way, something besides finding Marcus Hale. The seer's milky eyes fixed on him with what might have been pity. Blood curses are ancient magic, Your Majesty. They bind to the soul. Only the caster can release them. Or, she paused. Or what? Lena's voice came out hoarse. Or the cursed one must break the bond themselves before the curse completes its work. Adrian's hands clenched at his sides. No, it's the only other option, Alara said gently. If the bond is severed willingly, the curse has nothing to feed on. It will dissipate. And she'll die from a broken bond, Adrian shot back. That's not a solution. Not if she forms a new bond immediately after. Absolutely not. Adrian's voice was ice. I'm not letting her go through that again. Lena's mind raced. Marcus had cursed her. The man who'd betrayed her, who'd shattered her world, had left one final trap. A poison pill designed to destroy anything good she tried to build. And now everyone in this room was waiting for her to either die or leave. Lord Corwin stepped forward again. Your Majesty, surely you see the wisdom in dissolving this bond. For the safety of the realm is not in danger from Lena. But the curse is Marcus Hale's doing, not hers. Adrian's gaze swept the room. And if any of you had half the courage she's shown, you'd be demanding we hunt him down instead of casting her out like a criminal. Hunt him down? Lady Isolda's voice was sharp. He could be anywhere. It would take months to find him, and we don't have months. Then we find another way. There is no other way. Corwin's patience was clearly wearing thin. Your Majesty, I understand your attachment, but you must think of your people. If the bond breaks while she's still here, the magical backlash could… Could what? Lena interrupted, her voice cutting through his. Every eye turned to her. Kill him? Kill me? 'Cause some kind of catastrophe? Corwin's expression was smug. All of the above. Then I'll leave. No. Adrian's response was immediate and absolute. Adrian, no. He moved to stand between her and the assembly, his body a wall of protection. I told you before. I'm not letting you go. You don't have a choice, Lena's voice cracked. She could feel the eyes of hundreds of nobles on her, could feel their judgment, their fear, their hatred. If staying here means risking your life, then I have to leave. You know that. I know nothing of the sort. Your Majesty, Elara's voice cut through their argument. Perhaps there is a third option, one that neither of you has considered. Adrian turned to her sharply. What? The curse is designed to destroy the bond. But what if the bond became too strong for the curse to break? Silence fell. Explain, Adrian said. Elara moved closer, her staff tapping against the stone floor. Mate bonds grow stronger over time, deepening with trust, intimacy, shared experience. A new bond is fragile, easily severed, but an ancient bond, one that has been nurtured and reinforced, becomes nearly unbreakable. How long would that take? Lena asked. Years, typically, sometimes decades. Adrian's expression darkened. We don't have years. No, but there are ways to accelerate the process. Elara's gaze moved between them. The bonding ceremony. It's an old ritual, rarely performed anymore, but it binds two souls together in a way that transcends the physical mark. If done correctly, it could strengthen your bond enough to withstand the curse. Hope flickered in Lena's chest. How does it work? It requires a full exchange of essence, blood, soul, and will. Both parties must consent freely and absolutely. The ritual is intense, painful even, but if successful, it creates a bond so deep that breaking it would require both parties to die simultaneously. Lord Corwin scoffed. This is madness. You're suggesting the king bind himself permanently to a cursed woman on the off chance it might save them both? I'm suggesting, Elara said coolly, that the king has options beyond abandoning his mate or waiting for death. Adrian's eyes met Lena's, and in them she saw determination. When can we perform the ritual? Tonight, during the full moon. But, Your Majesty, Elara's expression grew grave. You must understand the risks. If the ritual fails, you'll both die. And even if it succeeds, there's no guarantee the bond will be strong enough to withstand the curse. What are the odds? Better than doing nothing, but still, Elara paused. I would estimate a 60% chance of success. 60%. Not great odds, but better than zero. We'll do it, Adrian said. Adrian, wait. Lena grabbed his arm. You can't make this decision for both of us. You're right. I can't. He turned to face her fully, his hands coming up to frame her face. So I'm asking, will you take this risk with me? The bond pulsed between them, warm and desperate. Lena thought about the past weeks. The terror of the dying bond, the shock of discovering Adrian's identity, the constant attacks from the court, the poison, the curse. She thought about walking away, about spending the rest of her life alone, knowing she'd lost the one person who'd ever looked at her and seen something worth saving. And she thought about the alternative, taking a chance, fighting for something real. Yes, she whispered, I'll do it. Adrian's relief was palpable. He pressed his forehead to hers, and for a moment, the rest of the room ceased to exist. Then Corwin's voice shattered the moment. This is insanity. Your Majesty, I cannot allow that. You cannot allow? Adrian's voice dropped to a dangerous register. He turned slowly to face Corwin, and the temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Let me make something very clear, Corwin. You are a member of my council, not my keeper. And if you attempt to interfere with this ritual, I will have you arrested for treason. Corwin's face went purple. You wouldn't dare! Try me! The two men stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Corwin looked away, his jaw tight with suppressed rage. Lady Isolde rose gracefully from her seat. Your Majesty, while I respect your dedication to Miss Rowan, surely you see how this appears. You're gambling the stability of the realm on an untested ritual for a woman you've known barely a month. What I see, Adrian said coldly, is that someone in this room, possibly several someones, would rather see Lena dead than accept her as my mate. And I'm done pretending that's about protecting the realm. A murmur rippled through the assembly. You want to know the truth? Adrian's voice rose, addressing the entire hall. The truth is that most of you don't care about the curse or the ritual or the risks. You care about power, about bloodlines, about maintaining your positions by controlling who sits beside me on the throne. That's not... Someone started to protest. It is. Adrian cut them off. And I'm sick of it. So here's what's going to happen. Tonight, Lena and I will perform the bonding ceremony. If we survive, she will be formally recognized as my queen, and if any of you have a problem with that, there's the door. Shocked silence. Then, slowly, a figure rose from the back of the hall. Captain Thorne. He moved to the front of the room and dropped to one knee before the platform. Your Majesty, I stand with you. Adrian's expression softened slightly. Thank you, Thorne. Another figure rose. A young noblewoman Lena didn't recognize. She walked forward and knelt beside Thorne. As do I. Then another, and another. One by one, people began to stand and move forward. Not everyone, probably less than half the assembly. But enough. Enough to matter. Lord Corwin's face was a mask of fury. Lady Isolde remained seated, her expression unreadable. But the tide was shifting. Adrian extended his hand to Lena, and she took it, letting him pull her to stand beside him. The summit is adjourned, Adrian announced. We reconvene tomorrow, after the ceremony. He turned and led Lena from the hall, their hands still clasped, the bond singing between them. Behind them, the assembly erupted into chaos. Next, the hours before the ritual passed in a blur. Lena was taken to a preparation chamber where Clara and two other attendants bathed her in water infused with herbs and oils. They dressed her in a simple white gown, almost ceremonial in its plainness, and left her hair loose down her back. You're very brave, Clara said softly as she worked. I don't think I could do what you're doing. I don't feel brave, Lena admitted. I feel terrified. That's what makes it brave. Clara smiled, echoing Thorne's words from days before. Will it hurt? The ritual? Probably. But it might save you both. Might? Clara squeezed her hand. Then it's worth it. When the preparations were complete, Alara arrived to escort Lena to the ritual site. They walked through the palace and out into the gardens. The full moon hung huge and silver overhead, casting everything in pale light. At the center of the gardens was a clearing, and in that clearing, a circle had been drawn in salt and crushed moonstone. Adrian was already there, dressed in simple black, his feet bare. Torches ringed the circle, their flames dancing in the night breeze. When he saw Lena, his expression transformed, fierce and tender and utterly focused. Alara gestured for Lena to enter the circle. She did, the salt crunching beneath her bare feet. Adrian took her hands, and the bond flared hot between them. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Are you? I've never been more sure of anything. Alara began to speak, her voice carrying ancient words in a language Lena didn't recognize. The air inside the circle grew heavy, charged with power. The ritual requires 3 exchanges, Alara explained, switching to common tongue. Blood, soul, and will. Each exchange deepens the bond. Each one carries risk. Do you both consent? Yes, Adrian said. Yes, Lena echoed. Then we begin. First exchange, blood. Alara produced a small silver knife. She took Adrian's hand and made a quick cut across his palm, then did the same to Lena. Blood welled, dark in the moonlight. Join hands, Alara instructed. They did, their cut palms pressing together. The moment their blood touched, pain exploded through Lena's arm. She gasped, her knees buckling, but Adrian's other hand caught her waist, holding her steady. The bond between them ignited, burning through her veins like liquid fire. She could feel Adrian's essence pouring into her, his strength, his determination, his barely controlled fear, and she felt her own essence flowing back, tangling with his, until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. Second exchange, soul, Ilara intoned. This time, the pain was different. It felt like something inside her chest was being pulled out, stretched thin, and woven together with something else. Lena cried out, her free hand clutching at Adrian's shoulder. "I've got you," he murmured. His voice was strained, and she realized he was feeling the same agony. "Stay with me." Lena focused on his eyes, green as summer leaves burning with intensity. She focused on the bond, on the connection growing between them, getting stronger with every heartbeat. The pain peaked, then slowly began to recede. Third exchange, will, Ilara said. This is the final binding. Speak your truth. Hold nothing back. Adrian's hands tightened on hers. I didn't want to mark you. I thought I was doing the right thing, the selfless thing. But the truth is, I wanted you from the moment I saw you. Not because you were dying, not out of pity, but because when I looked at you, I saw someone who refused to give up. Someone who'd lost everything and was still fighting. And his voice cracked. I've spent my whole life being what everyone else needed me to be. But with you, I wanted to be something different, something real. Lena's eyes burned with tears. I was so broken when you found me. I thought I'd lost everything, my bond, my future, my will to keep going, but you saved me. And then you left, and She swallowed hard. I was so angry, so hurt. But even then, I could feel you on the other end of the bond. And it kept me going. You kept me going. So if there's even a chance we can survive this together, I'll take it. Because losing you would be worse than any curse. The bond between them exploded. It felt like the sun had ignited in her chest. Lena screamed, and Adrian's roar joined hers as the power consumed them both. The torches around the circle flared, the flames shooting 10 feet high. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Lena collapsed against Adrian, and they went down together, kneeling in the center of the circle, clinging to each other. The bond was different now. It wasn't just a connection, it was a living thing, pulsing with shared heartbeat, shared breath, shared existence. Ilara approached the edge of the circle, her expression awestruck. The ritual is complete. The bond is sealed. Lena could barely breathe. Did it work? Is it strong enough? Only time will tell. But Ilara's milky eyes seemed to see right through them. I have never witnessed a bond this deep. If anything can withstand a blood curse, it's this. Adrian helped Lena to her feet, and they stood together, swaying slightly. How long until we know? Adrian asked. The curse will try to break the bond within the next day or two. If you survive that, you'll have succeeded. A day or two? Lena's stomach twisted, but when she looked at Adrian, she saw determination in his eyes. We'll survive, he said. It wasn't a hope. It was a promise. They returned to the palace as dawn broke. Word of the ritual had spread, and servants and guards alike stopped to stare as they passed. Some faces showed hope. Others, fear. A few, open hostility. But Adrian ignored them all, leading Lena directly to his private chambers. The rooms were larger than hers, decorated in dark woods and deep blues. A massive bed dominated one wall, and windows overlooked the city beyond. Rest, Adrian said, guiding her to the bed. The next few days are going to be difficult. Lena caught his hand. Stay with me. Something vulnerable flashed across his face. Always. They lay down together, still in their ceremonial clothes, and Adrian pulled her against his chest. The bond hummed between them, steady and strong. What happens if the curse wins? Lena asked quietly. It won't. But if it does, then we go down together. Adrian's arms tightened around her. But I'm not planning on that. We've survived this long. We'll survive the rest. Lena wanted to believe him. She closed her eyes and let herself sink into the warmth of the bond, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. And for the first time in weeks, she slept without nightmares. She woke to screaming pain. It felt like someone had driven a knife into her chest and was twisting it. Lena jerked upright, gasping, her hands clutching at her ribcage. Beside her, Adrian groaned, his face contorted in agony. The curse, it was activating. Ilara! Adrian's shout was hoarse. Get Ilara! The door burst open. Guards rushed in, followed moments later by the seer. Alara approached the bed, her expression grave. The curse is fighting the bond. This is the critical moment. How long will it last? Lena managed through gritted teeth. Hours? Maybe longer? Alara placed a hand on her shoulder. You must hold on, both of you. Don't let go of each other, and don't let go of the bond. Adrian reached for Lena's hand, and the moment their fingers touched, the pain lessened slightly. That's it, Alara said. The bond is your anchor. Focus on it. Let it be stronger than the curse. The next hours were a blur of agony. The curse attacked in waves, each one worse than the last. It felt like the bond was being ripped apart from the inside, shredded by invisible claws. Lena screamed until her throat was raw. Adrian's hand was a vice grip on hers, his own pain evident in every labored breath. But the bond held. Every time the curse surged, trying to tear them apart, the bond pushed back. The connection they'd forged during the ritual blazed like a star, refusing to break. Lena focused on it with everything she had. She focused on Adrian's presence, solid and unwavering, on the promises they'd made, on the future they were fighting for. And slowly, so slowly, the attacks began to weaken. The pain receded from excruciating to merely unbearable, then to manageable, then, finally, to a dull ache. When it was over, Lena lay gasping on the bed, drenched in sweat, her entire body trembling. Alara leaned over them, her hand on the bond mark. Her expression transformed from concern to wonder. It's gone, she breathed. The curse is broken. Lena couldn't process the words. What? The bond was too strong. The curse couldn't break it, so it... Alara shook her head in amazement. It burned itself out. I've never seen anything like it. Adrian let out a shaky laugh that was half sob. He pulled Lena against him, burying his face in her hair. We did it. We actually did it. Lena clung to him, tears streaming down her face. We survived. You survived. The relief was overwhelming, but beneath it, something else was stirring. The bond had changed again during the fight with the curse. It was deeper now, almost frighteningly strong. She could feel Adrian's emotions as clearly as her own, his relief, his joy, his love. His love. She pulled back to look at him, and in his eyes she saw it clearly. I love you, he said quietly. I think I have since that night in the tavern. Lena's breath caught. Adrian, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. I love you too. The words came easily, naturally. I didn't want to. I tried not to, but I do. He kissed her then, soft and desperate and full of everything they'd been through. When they finally broke apart, Alara was smiling. The realm has its queen, she said, and the curse that would have destroyed you both is nothing but ash. The news spread through the palace like wildfire. By afternoon, a crowd had gathered in the courtyard, calling for Adrian and Lena to appear. Not a hostile crowd this time, a celebrating one. Adrian led Lena onto the balcony that overlooked the courtyard, and the roar that went up was deafening. People cheered, waved banners, chanted their names. Not everyone was celebrating. Lena could see Lord Corwin's furious face in the crowd, and Lady Isolde's cold disapproval. But they were outnumbered. The people had chosen. Adrian raised his hand, and the crowd quieted. 3 days ago, I stood before you with a bond that many questioned, a mate that many condemned, and a future that many feared. His voice carried across the courtyard. Today, I stand before you with proof that love, true love, can overcome anything, even ancient curses, even death itself. The crowd roared approval. Lena Rowan faced a curse designed to kill her and destroy our bond, and she survived, not through magic or trickery, but through courage and determination and an unbreakable will. He turned to Lena, his eyes fierce with pride. She is my mate, my queen, and anyone who doubts that can answer to me. The cheering was thunderous. Adrian pulled Lena close and kissed her in front of the entire assembly. The bond blazed between them, and Lena felt the connection to the crowd, felt their acceptance, their hope, their belief. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian murmured in her ear, "Welcome to your new life, my queen." Lena looked out over the sea of faces, at the palace that was now her home, at the man beside her who'd risked everything for her. And for the first time since that terrible night in the forest, She felt whole. The girl who'd been cast aside, broken and dying, had become a queen. And the worst was finally, truly over. Or so she thought, because in the shadows at the edge of the courtyard, a figure watched with cold, calculating eyes. Marcus Hale had come to the capital, and he wasn't finished with her yet. The celebration in the courtyard was still roaring when Captain Thorne appeared at Adrian's side, his expression grim. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, leaning close. "We have a situation." Adrian's posture shifted instantly from relaxed to alert. Lena felt it through the bond, the sudden spike of tension. "What kind of situation?" Adrian asked, his voice low enough that only Thorne and Lena could hear. "A man was apprehended trying to enter the palace through the east gate. He claims to be Marcus Hale, says he has information about the curse." Lena's blood turned to ice. Adrian's hand tightened on hers. "Where is he?" "Holding cell in the lower guard tower. I have 6 men on him." Thorne's gaze flicked to Lena. "He's asking to see her." "Absolutely not," Adrian said immediately. "Adrian," Lena started. "No, this could be a trap. He cursed you once. I'm not giving him another chance." "The curse is broken," Lena said, forcing her voice to stay steady, even though her heart was hammering. "Ilara confirmed it. He can't hurt me anymore." "He can try." "Then let him try in front of witnesses, in front of you." Lena turned to face Adrian fully, meeting his eyes. "I need to face him. I need to know why he did this." Adrian stared at her for a long moment, the bond pulsing with his reluctance and his understanding. Finally, he nodded. "Fine. But we do this on my terms. In the throne room. With guards. And if he so much as looks at you wrong, I'm ending him." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Otamt. They reconvened in the throne room 30 minutes later. The space felt different now, less like a courtroom and more like a battleground. Adrian sat on his throne, Lena standing at his right hand. Guards lined the walls, hands on weapons. Ilara stood near the platform, her staff in hand. And Captain Thorne waited by the doors, his expression unreadable. Lord Corwin and Lady Isolde had been summoned as well, along with several other high-ranking nobles. They took their seats in the gallery, watching with hungry eyes. The doors opened and 2 guards marched in, dragging a man between them. Lena's breath caught. Marcus looked terrible. His clothes were torn and dirty, his face gaunt and unshaven. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands were bound in iron. He looked nothing like the confident, charismatic wolf who'd once promised to love her forever. He looked broken. But when his eyes found Lena, they burned with something fierce and desperate. The guards forced him to his knees at the base of the platform. Adrian leaned forward, his voice cold as winter. "Marcus Hale, you stand accused of casting a blood curse on my mate. How do you plead?" Marcus's gaze never left Lena. "Guilty." A murmur rippled through the room. "Why?" The word tore from Lena before she could stop it. "Why would you do that to me?" Marcus's expression twisted. "Because you left me." "You left me first. You chose Serena." "I didn't choose her." Marcus's voice cracked. "She was chosen for me. By her father, by the elders, by everyone who said you weren't good enough. I tried to fight it, Lena. I tried to—" He stopped, his jaw working. "But they wouldn't listen. So I thought if I just went through with it, if I bonded with Serena, you'd move on. You'd find someone else, someone better. So you cursed me to make sure I'd die if I did?" "I cursed you because I was angry." Marcus's shout echoed through the hall. "Because I was hurt and stupid and I wanted—" His voice dropped to a whisper. "I wanted you to suffer the way I was suffering." Silence fell. Lena stared at him, this man who'd once been everything to her, and felt nothing but pity. "You didn't suffer," she said quietly. "You chose comfort over courage. You chose status over love. And then you punished me for surviving what you put me through." "I know." Tears streaked down Marcus's face. "I know what I did, and I came here to fix it." Adrian stood, descending the steps until he loomed over Marcus. "The curse is already broken. We don't need you. But I can make sure it never comes back." Marcus looked up at Adrian, then back to Lena. "Blood curses echo. Even when they're broken, they leave scars, shadows that can resurface under the right conditions. But if I remove it properly, if I undo the magic at its source, those echoes disappear. You'll be completely free. Alara stepped forward. He's telling the truth. A broken curse can leave residue. Removing it entirely would be safer. Adrian looked at Lena, the question clear in his eyes. Lena's hands were shaking, but she forced herself to nod. Do it. Not without assurances, Adrian said sharply. He turned to Marcus. You'll remove the curse under Alara's supervision. If you try anything at all, you'll be executed immediately. Understood? Understood. Adrian gestured to the guards. Bring him forward. They hauled Marcus to his feet and pushed him up the steps. Lena's heart pounded as he approached, every instinct screaming at her to run, but she held her ground. Marcus stopped 3 feet away, his bound hands hanging at his sides. Up close, she could see the regret etched into every line of his face. I'm sorry, he said softly, for all of it. You deserved better than what I gave you. Yes, Lena said. I did. Alara moved to stand beside them. The removal requires physical contact. He'll need to touch the mark where the curse was anchored. Lena's hand went instinctively to her shoulder, to Adrian's mark. Not that one, Alara said gently. The first one, where Marcus marked you. Lena's stomach twisted. The old mark had faded when Adrian marked her, but she could still feel it, a ghost of sensation on the other shoulder. She turned slightly, exposing the faded scar. Marcus raised his bound hands, and Adrian's growl was immediate. Remove the restraints, Marcus said. I can't do this with iron on. Not a chance, Adrian said. The magic won't work through iron. You know that. Adrian looked at Thorn, who nodded reluctantly. It's true, Your Majesty. Fine. But if he tries anything... I know, Marcus said. You'll kill me. I get it. The guards removed the iron cuffs. Marcus rubbed his wrists, then slowly reached toward Lena's shoulder. She forced herself not to flinch as his fingers touched the scar. The reaction was immediate. Pain flared hot and sharp, and Lena gasped. Marcus closed his eyes, his jaw tight with concentration, and began to murmur words in the old tongue. The pain intensified. It felt like the curse was being pulled out of her, torn free from where it had buried itself in her soul. Lena's knees buckled, but Adrian was there instantly, his arm around her waist, holding her steady. Almost done, Marcus gritted out. Just hold on. The pain peaked, then suddenly vanished. Marcus stumbled backward, his hand falling away. In his palm was a small, dark mass, like smoke given form. It writhed and twisted, trying to escape. Alara, Marcus said urgently. The seer stepped forward and placed her staff against the dark mass. It flared once, brilliant and blinding, then disintegrated into nothing. The curse was gone. Truly, completely gone. Lena sagged against Adrian, relief flooding through her so powerfully she thought she might collapse. It's done, Alara confirmed. The curse is removed. There will be no echoes. Marcus dropped to his knees again, exhausted. The guards immediately moved to restrain him. Adrian helped Lena back to her chair, then turned to face Marcus. You removed the curse. That earns you leniency, but not freedom. You'll stand trial for what you did. I know. Marcus's voice was hollow. I'm not asking for mercy, Your Majesty. He looked at Lena one last time. I just wanted to make one thing right before I faced justice. Lena stared at him, this man who'd loved her and destroyed her and now finally freed her. She felt the bond with Adrian, strong and unshakable. Felt the future stretching out before her, bright and full of possibility. And she realized she'd already forgiven him. Not because he deserved it, but because holding on to that anger would only poison the life she was trying to build. Thank you, she said quietly, for removing the curse. I hope you find peace, Marcus. I really do. Something in his expression broke. He bowed his head, and the guards led him away. When the doors closed behind him, the tension in the room finally eased. Adrian pulled Lena against him, and she buried her face in his chest, letting herself shake with relief. It's over, he murmured into her hair. It's finally over. But even as he said it, Lord Corwin rose from his seat. Your Majesty, he said, his voice tight, while I'm pleased that the curse has been removed, there remains the matter of Miss Rowan's legitimacy as queen. Adrian's arms tightened around Lena. We've been through this, Corwin. Have we? The bond is intact, yes. But the realm still questions whether a woman with no bloodline, no training, no political connections is fit to rule beside you. Then the realm can learn, Adrian said coldly. Or, a new voice cut in, the realm can see exactly what she's made of. Everyone turned. Lady Isolde stood, her expression unreadable. Your Majesty, if I may suggest an alternative to endless debate? Adrian's eyes narrowed. What kind of alternative? A challenge. Not of combat, but of leadership. Isolde's gaze shifted to Lena. Miss Rowan claims she's fit to be queen. Let her prove it. What are you proposing? Lena asked, finding her voice. The Northern Territories have been in dispute for months. 2 settlements are on the brink of war over water rights and boundaries. Mediators have failed. Violence has escalated. 3 people died in skirmishes last week alone. Isolde's smile was cold. Send Miss Rowan to negotiate a peace. If she succeeds, the council will formally recognize her as queen. If she fails, the implication hung heavy in the air. That's absurd, Adrian said. Those negotiations have been going on for months. Trained diplomats couldn't resolve them. Which makes it a perfect test, doesn't it? Corwin's expression was smug. If she can do what seasoned negotiators could not, she'll have proven herself beyond question. And if she can't, well, perhaps that tells us something too. It was a trap. Lena could see it clearly. They were setting her up to fail, to embarrass herself and Adrian in front of the entire realm. But it was also an opportunity. Through the bond, she felt Adrian's protective fury. He was about to refuse, to shut down the suggestion entirely. Lena placed her hand on his arm, stopping him. I'll do it, she said. Lena. I'll do it, she repeated, louder. She looked at Isolde, then at Corwin. I'll go to the Northern Territories. I'll negotiate the peace, and when I succeed, you'll all recognize me as queen, publicly. No more whispers, no more challenges. Corwin's smile widened. Agreed. No. Adrian's voice was sharp. I'm not sending you into a potential war zone alone. Then send guards with me. Send advisors. But I'm going. Lena turned to face him fully. Adrian, if I don't do this, they'll never accept me. There will always be doubt, always be questions. But if I can do this, if I can prove I'm not just your mate, but a leader in my own right, then we win. Completely. Adrian stared at her, conflict clear in his eyes. You could be killed. I could be killed here too. Someone already tried to poison me, remember? That's not funny. I'm not joking. Lena's voice softened. I know you want to protect me, but I can't spend my life hiding behind you. I need to stand beside you. And to do that, I need to prove I can stand on my own. The bond pulsed between them, carrying everything they couldn't say in front of the court. Finally, Adrian nodded. Fine, but you're taking Thorne and 20 of my best guards, and I want daily reports. Deal. Isolde inclined her head. Then it's settled. Miss Rowan departs for the Northern Territories in 3 days. May fortune favor her efforts. The session adjourned, and as the nobles filed out, Lena caught Isolde watching her with an expression that might have been respect, or it might have been anticipation of her failure. Lena couldn't tell which. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Advisors briefed Lena on the history of the Northern dispute, decades of tension over resources, old family feuds, territorial claims that dated back generations. Captain Thorne drilled her on security protocols, teaching her to recognize threats and escape routes. Clara helped her pack practical travel clothes and formal negotiation attire. And Adrian barely left her side. On the second night, he took her to the palace library and pulled out maps of the Northern Territories. Greystone and Riverfen have hated each other for 30 years, he said, spreading the maps across the table. It started with a mining accident that killed 15 men from Riverfen. Greystone blamed faulty equipment. Riverfen blamed negligence. The families never forgave each other. So this isn't really about the river, Lena said slowly. The river's what they're fighting over now, but the real wound goes much deeper. Adrian traced the boundary line between the 2 settlements. Every diplomat who's tried to mediate has focused on dividing resources. None of them addressed the grief. Lena studied the map, her mind working. What if that's the key? What if they don't need someone to divide things fairly? They need someone to acknowledge what they've lost? Adrian looked at her, something like wonder in his eyes. That's exactly the kind of thinking that's going to make you an incredible queen. If I survive. You will. He pulled her close. You're the strongest person I know, Lena. You just don't see it yet. On the last night before her departure, they stood together on the balcony of his chambers, looking out over the city. You don't have to do this, Adrian said quietly. I could refuse the challenge. Tell them it's beneath the dignity of a queen to prove herself to a council. But it's not beneath my dignity to prove myself to myself, Lena said. I need to know I can do this, Adrian. Not for them. For me. He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. You're already more than they deserve. Maybe, but I'm going to show them anyway. They stood in silence for a while, the bond humming peacefully between them. I'll miss you, Adrian said. I'll miss you too. But I'll be back in 2 weeks. 3 at most. And if the negotiations fail, they won't. But if they do, then I'll figure something else out. Lena turned in his arms to face him. I survived a broken bond, a curse, and your court. I can handle a couple of stubborn northern lords. Adrian smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, and Lena poured everything she felt into it. Her love, her determination, her absolute certainty that she would come back to him. When they finally broke apart, Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. Come back to me, he whispered. Always. The journey north took 6 days. Lena traveled with Captain Thorne and 20 guards, plus 2 advisors who looked at her with barely concealed skepticism. The terrain grew rougher as they went, rolling hills giving way to rocky highlands, forests thinning into scrubland. The disputed territories lay between 2 settlements, Greystone, a mining town nestled in the mountains, and Riverfen, a farming community along the Valley River. Both claimed the land between them, and both depended on the river that ran through it. Thorne rode beside Lena most of the journey, pointing out landmarks and potential dangers. The settlements are only 10 miles apart, he explained as they crested a ridge. But they might as well be on different continents. No trade between them. No intermarriage. Nothing. 30 years is a long time to hold a grudge, Lena said. Grief doesn't have a timeline. Thorne's expression was somber. I lost my brother in a border skirmish 20 years ago. I still think about him every day. Lena glanced at him. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just understand, whatever solution you offer, it has to honor what they've lost. Otherwise, they'll never accept it. When they arrived at the makeshift neutral ground where negotiations would take place, a large tent erected in the disputed zone, Lena found both parties already waiting. Lord Garrett of Greystone was a massive man with a gray beard and eyes like flint. Scars covered his hands and forearms, evidence of decades spent in the mines. Lady Mara of Riverfen was smaller, but no less intimidating, with sharp features, a sharper tongue, and calluses that spoke of hard farm work. They glared at each other across the tent, decades of animosity crackling between them. And when Lena entered, both turned that animosity on her. This is who the king sends? Garrett's voice was a rumble. A child? I'm 23, Lena said evenly, and I'm here to help you reach an agreement. We don't need a girl playing diplomat, Mara said coldly. We need someone who understands what's at stake. Then explain it to me. Lena sat down at the table between them, meeting both their gazes steadily. I'm listening. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Garrett leaned forward. The river is our lifeblood. Without it, the mines dry up. The dust becomes unbearable. Men die. And without the river, our crops fail, Mara countered. Our children go hungry. Our people starve. You took more than your share last summer because you diverted the flow the summer before. After your people sabotaged our pumps, your people killed our livestock. Enough! Lena's voice cut through the arguing. Both lords fell silent, staring at her in surprise. I've read the reports. I know the history. But I want to hear it from you. Not the accusations, not the grievances. I want to know what you've lost. Silence fell. Garrett's jaw worked. I lost my son in those mines. 10 years ago, when the water dried up and the dust got so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. He was 17. Lena's chest tightened. I'm sorry. My husband, Mara said quietly. He died trying to save the wheat fields during a drought 5 years ago. Worked himself to death because we didn't have enough water. I'm sorry, Lena repeated. For the first time, the two lords looked at each other without pure hatred, just exhaustion, just grief. You've both lost so much, Lena said softly, and you're both terrified of losing more. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not just the river. The fear that if you give an inch, you'll lose everything. Neither of them answered, but she saw the truth in their eyes. What if I told you there's enough for both of you? Lena pulled out the map. What if the problem isn't scarcity? It's management. There's not enough water, Garrett said flatly. During dry season, no. But during wet season, there's more than enough. And the river splits here. She pointed to the map. 3 miles into the disputed zone. One branch flows toward Greystone, the other toward Riverfin. Right now, you're fighting over the entire river. But what if you shared the split? Shared how? Mara asked suspiciously. Build a system of locks and channels. During dry season, you alternate priority. 1 week Greystone gets primary flow for the mines, the next week Riverfin gets it for irrigation. During wet season, you split it evenly. Both settlements get what they need. That would require construction, Garrett said. Money we don't have. The Crown will fund it, Lena said, as an investment in peace. And who controls this system? Mara's eyes narrowed. Because I don't trust him not to sabotage it. And I don't trust her, Garrett shot back. Then neither of you controls it. Lena leaned forward. We appoint a neutral overseer, someone from the capital who reports directly to the king, someone with no stake in either settlement. What's to stop you from favoring one side? Mara asked. The fact that I've never met either of you before today. I have no history here, no allegiances. My only goal is to keep the peace. Lena looked between them. But this only works if you're both willing to trust the process. To trust each other, at least enough to try. Garrett stroked his beard, his expression thoughtful. What about design? Who decides how the system works? You do. Both of you. Your engineers work together. Your councils approve the plans together. This isn't me imposing a solution. It's you two finding one with my help. Mara and Garrett looked at each other for a long moment. Then, slowly, Mara extended her hand across the table. 6 months, she said. We try it for 6 months. If it doesn't work, we renegotiate, Garrett finished. He reached out and shook her hand. Together. Relief flooded through Lena so powerfully she thought she might collapse. But she kept her expression calm, professional. Then let's draft the agreement, Todd. The next 3 days were intense. Both sides brought engineers, council members, and advisors. Arguments erupted over flow rates, channel depths, maintenance schedules. More than once, Lena thought the whole thing would collapse. But each time tensions peaked, she steered them back to common ground. Back to what they'd lost, and what they stood to gain. On the third night, as they hammered out the final details, Garrett looked at her with something like respect. You're not what I expected, he said. What did you expect? Someone who'd try to force us into line. Someone who'd threaten us with the king's authority. He paused. But you listened. You actually listened. That's because the solution was never mine to give, Lena said. It was yours. I just helped you see it. By dawn, the treaty was complete. Both sides signed, their seals pressed into the wax. When Lena rode out of the disputed zone with the document in her pack, Thorne was grinning. You did it, he said. I honestly didn't think you would. Neither did I, Lena admitted, but desperation is a powerful motivator. It wasn't desperation, it was leadership. Thorne's expression grew serious. They trusted you because you didn't come with assumptions or demands. You let them find the solution themselves. You gave them permission to stop fighting. That's what good leaders do, one of the advisors said, the same one who'd doubted her at the start. Your Majesty, Lena blinked. I'm not queen yet. You will be, the advisor said. After this, they can't deny you. Warmth bloomed in Lena's chest, not from the bond, from pride. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. And now she was going home. The return journey felt shorter, fueled by anticipation and exhaustion in equal measure. When they finally crested the hill that overlooked the capital, Lena's breath caught. The city spread before her, beautiful and familiar and home. They arrived at the palace at sunset. Word of her success had traveled ahead, messengers had ridden hard to bring the news, and a crowd had gathered in the courtyard. Adrian stood at the top of the steps, resplendent in formal blacks, his expression fierce with pride and relief. The moment Lena dismounted, he was there, pulling her into his arms and kissing her like they'd been apart for years instead of weeks. The crowd erupted in cheers. When they finally broke apart, Adrian cupped her face. "I knew you'd do it. Liar. You were worried sick. Terrified, actually. But I also knew you were brilliant." He kissed her again, quick and hard. "The council has convened. They want to hear your report." "Now?" "They've been waiting since word arrived this morning. Corwin looks like he's been chewing nails." Lena laughed despite her exhaustion. "Then let's not keep them waiting." They walked into the palace together, hand in hand, the bond singing between them. The council chamber was packed. Every noble, every advisor, every person who doubted her was there. Lena stood before them and presented the treaty. She explained the solution, the cooperation it would require, the precedent it could set for other territorial disputes across the realm. When she finished, silence filled the room. Then Lady Isolde stood. "Miss Rowan," she said, her voice carrying across the chamber, "you have done what trained diplomats could not. You've brought peace to a conflict that threatened to escalate into open warfare. You've demonstrated wisdom, courage, and strategic thinking far beyond your years." She paused, and for the first time Lena saw genuine respect in her eyes. "The council formally recognizes you as Queen Lena Rowan, mate to King Adrian Vane and co-ruler of this realm." The chamber erupted, but this time it was applause. Not everyone joined in. Corwin sat stone-faced, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. A few others looked sour, their expressions tight with resentment. But the majority stood and clapped, and Lena saw acceptance in their faces, saw respect, saw the beginning of something that looked like loyalty. She'd won. Adrian pulled her close, and the bond blazed between them, warm with shared triumph and relief and love. "All hail Queen Lena," someone called from the back. The chant was taken up by dozens of voices, growing louder with each repetition. "All hail Queen Lena! All hail the Alpha Queen!" Lena looked out over the assembly at the people who'd once wanted her gone, who'd called her a manipulator, a fraud, a threat to the realm. And now they were calling her their queen. Adrian leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. "How does it feel?" Lena smiled, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. "Like coming home." The coronation took place 2 weeks later. It was a grand affair, the entire court in attendance, nobles from across the realm, ceremonies that lasted from dawn to dusk. Lena wore a gown of midnight blue embroidered with silver wolves that seemed to move in the light. When the crown was placed on her head, delicate silver wrought to look like intertwined branches, she felt its weight settle like a promise to the realm, to Adrian, to herself. Adrian stood beside her, his hand in hers, and when they faced the assembly as king and queen, the roar of approval shook the ancient rafters. That night they held a feast that lasted until the early hours of morning. Musicians played, dancers performed, and Lena found herself swept into conversation after conversation with nobles who wanted to congratulate her, to pledge their support, to tell her how impressed they'd been with her handling of the northern dispute. Even Lord Corwin approached, though his expression was sour. "Your Majesty," he said stiffly, "it seems I underestimated you." "You did," Lena said simply, "but I hope you won't make that mistake again." His jaw tightened, but he bowed and moved away. Lady Isolde appeared at her elbow. Well handled, Corwin needed that reminder. "Thank you for your support," Lena said. "I know you had doubts." "I did, but you've proven yourself." Isolde's gaze was sharp but not unkind. "The Northern Territories are already implementing your system. Early reports suggest it's working even better than expected. You may have just solved a problem that's plagued this realm for decades." "We solved it," Lena corrected gently. "All of us. I just facilitated." Isolde's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "Gracious and strategic. You'll do well, Queen Lena." As the night wore on, Lena found herself growing tired but content. She stood on the balcony overlooking the gardens, watching the celebrations continue below. Adrian joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Tired?" he asked. "Exhausted, but happy." "Good." He kissed the top of her head. "You were magnificent tonight. You are magnificent." Lena leaned back against him, letting the bond wrap around them both like a warm blanket. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "You could have. You just didn't have to." He turned her to face him. "I'm so proud of you, Lena. So incredibly proud." She looked up at this man who'd saved her life and then taught her to save herself, who'd risked everything for her, who'd stood beside her through every challenge. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." Adrian pulled her closer. "My queen, my mate, my everything." And in that moment, Lena knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Months passed, and Lena settled into her role as queen. She traveled to the Northern Territories again to watch as the water management system was unveiled. Lord Garrett and Lady Mara stood side by side, no longer adversaries but cautious allies, united by a shared success. "You changed everything," Mara said to Lena as they watched water flow smoothly through the new channels. "Not just the river, but the way we see each other, the way we see ourselves." "You changed it yourselves," Lena said. "I just gave you a reason to try." "Will you come back?" Garrett asked. "When it's time to renew the agreement?" "Of course, this is just the beginning." The Eastern provinces requested her mediation for a trade dispute. She resolved it in 3 weeks. The Southern Territories asked for her help with a succession crisis. She navigated the complex family politics and helped them find a compromise that satisfied all parties. With each success, her reputation grew. The Queen of Negotiations, they called her, the People's Queen. Marcus's trial concluded with a sentence of 5 years in service to the crown, not imprisonment, but working under Alara's supervision to help other wolves break curse bonds. It was justice tempered with mercy, and Lena had advocated for it herself. When she visited him in his quarters one afternoon, Marcus looked up in surprise. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing awkwardly. "Just Lena," she said. "I wanted to see how you were doing." "Better than I deserve." He gestured to the books and magical supplies scattered across his desk. "Alara's teaching me proper curse breaking. I've helped 3 wolves already." "I'm glad." Lena paused. "I forgave you, Marcus. I thought you should know." His eyes widened. "Why?" "Because holding on to anger was only hurting me. Because you removed the curse and saved my life. Because—" She smiled slightly. "Because I'm happy now, and I want you to have a chance at happiness too." Marcus's throat worked. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just keep doing this work. Keep helping people. That's enough." When she left, she felt lighter, freer. The girl who'd run into the forest heartbroken and dying was truly gone. In her place was a queen who'd learned that strength came not from never falling, but from rising every time you did. A year after her coronation, Lena stood in the throne room beside Adrian, listening to a report from the Northern Territories. "The system is working perfectly," the messenger said. "Both settlements are thriving. They're even talking about a joint festival next spring." "Excellent," Adrian said. "Send our congratulations and inform them we'll attend if our schedule permits." When the messenger left, Lena turned to Adrian with a grin. "A joint festival? Can you believe it?" "I can when you're involved." He pulled her close. "You've changed this realm, Lena. Made it better." "We've changed it. Together." "Together," he agreed. Later that night, as they prepared for bed, Adrian watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about the future." "What about it?" "About what comes next, for us, for the realm." He took her hands. "Lena, I want to start a family with you. If you're ready, if you want that." Lena's breath caught. She'd thought about it, of course, dreamed about it. But hearing him say it made it real. "I want that," she said softly. "I want everything with you." Adrian's smile was brilliant. He kissed her, deep and tender, and the bond blazed between them. The girl nobody wanted was building a life nobody could have imagined. And it was only just beginning. 2 years after becoming queen, Lena stood in the same northern territories where she'd first proven herself. But this time she was witnessing something extraordinary. The joint festival was in full swing. People from Greystone and Riverfen mingled freely, sharing food and stories and laughter. Children from both settlements played together. Young couples danced, their origins forgotten in the joy of the moment. Lord Garrett approached with Lady Mara at his side. Not just allies now, but friends. "Your Majesty," Garrett said, "we wanted to thank you for everything you've done." "For everything we've built together," Lena corrected. "Our children will grow up not knowing the hatred we carried," Mara said. "That's because of you." Lena looked out at the celebration, at the proof that peace was possible even in the most broken places. "That's because people are capable of extraordinary things when they're given a chance," she said. "You proved that." Adrian appeared at her side, their daughter in his arms. Elena was 6 months old, with Adrian's green eyes and Lena's dark hair. She babbled happily, reaching for Lena. Lena took her daughter, holding her close, and felt the bond between her and Adrian pulse with love and contentment. The girl who'd been cast aside, broken and dying in a forest, had become a queen. The woman who'd survived betrayal and curses, and the cruelty of a hostile court, was now a mother, a leader, a symbol of hope. And standing beside the man who'd saved her life and then helped her save herself, surrounded by the people she served and protected, Lena finally understood. She hadn't just survived. She'd won. Not by defeating her enemies, though she'd done that too, but by becoming someone worthy of the crown she wore, someone who'd earned every bit of respect she commanded, someone who'd transformed pain into purpose and loss into strength, the Alpha Queen. And her reign was everything she'd never dared to dream.